I would like to call the February 4th, 2019 St. Clair Shores City Council to order. Mary, please call the roll.
Mayor Walby.
Here.
Councilmember Asia.
Here.
Councilmember Karen.
Here.
Councilmember Frederick.
Present.
Councilmember Rubino.
Here.
Councilmember Rusi.
Present.
Councilmember Vitale.
Here.
A quorum present.
Please rise for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2, proclamations, presentations. We don't have any audience participation, Mary.
We have one this evening, Mayor. Jim Goodfellow, resident of St. Clair Shores, on agenda items 4 and 5.
2-minute time limit to speak on the agendas that are in front of us. Good evening, Mr. Goodfellow.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Jim Goodfellow, St. Clair Shores resident. The first one is for the Irma's frozen custard. Rather than a wall, because of this school being across the street, wouldn't it be a little better to have maybe a hedge there so that the kids don't take bets to who can jump up onto the wall and things like that and save possible liability claims against the store owner? It's only a question, because I'd rather be proactive rather than reactive, as I say, or even a fence rather than the wall, because of the kids in the school across the street. It's only a question. The next one is for the fire department, for the BA sets. Well, having walked in the shoes of the fire department in my hometown, back home in Scotland, I know what these guys go through. And I hope Council unanimously approves the chief's budget to get the new BA sets, because the other ones are, what, 2012 in that neighborhood. So they're aging a little bit. And again, proactive rather than reactive, because if you ever get invited to try it out one day with the chief or any of the other firemen in a smoke-filled room, I think you would understand. Because as I say, I've walked in their shoes. Thank you and have a good evening.
You too, thank you. Item 4, request to amend a planning case to allow landscape hedge in place of a 30-inch brick knee wall at Irma's Frozen Custard, 28840 Harper. Gentlemen? Name and address, please.
Good evening. Jason Shaner, 28840 Harper Avenue, Irma's Frozen Custard.
Okay.
We were here previously for your approval on plans for exterior renovation changes as well as canopy addition on the property. Since then, or after that, the Zoning Board of Appeals had us, required us to do the 30-inch knee wall. At that point, we started looking for bids on that. In the meantime, we found out that that ordinance has since changed and allowed for the hedge replacement instead of the knee wall. And that's what you have in front of you now, which is a 50-foot hedge on the north end of the property between the sidewalk and the parking lot in place of that knee wall. So we're looking for that approval.
And Mr. Erie, they've come here, then they went to ZBA. It was all talked about for the wall. The ZBA said you got to put a wall up. So it's appropriate, and as the gentleman just said, the landscaping was not on the books at that time. But it's proper for them to come back and ask for that request to this body.
That is proper, even though the Zoning Board of Appeals had denied the request to waive the knee wall. The fact that the city changed its ordinance, which became effective June 13th of 2018, allowing a hedge, a hedge that essentially is sustainable and that goes 12 months a year as an option to brick, the fact that that occurred after the ZBA is really of non-issue. It is permissible right now, so the only question right now is whether to amend the site plan, and that does come before City Council, but quite frankly, there is virtually no discretion involved because it is a permissible, barrier.
And that says north elevation, that's on Lott Street, right? That's,
On Lot Street, yes, correct.
Mr. Rubino?
Thank you. I think this is a perfect example of why we went forward and changed the ordinance. I think it'll look good and serve the exact same purpose. I will move to approve.
Support.
By Mr. Rubino, supported by Ms. Rusi to approve. Mr. Isha?
Yeah, I just had a question on the hedge. How far back from the sidewalk is it going to be?
So we were planning on making a
Curious.
36-inch saw cut from the sidewalk, and then the hedge would go in the middle of that.
So it'll be,
So,
right, it's at 15 inches and
18?
18?
yes, approximately. Yep.
Okay,
On either side of the hedge would be
Yeah,
about,
okay.
12 to 15 inches.
thank you. I was just curious. It does look nice. I was just curious, how it would sit.
Mr. Vitale?
Gentlemen, I'm going to vote no on this, which I know will be the only no vote, based on essentially the principle that when you came in front of us, you asked for another variance, and this was part of the variance, was that you were to build this knee wall, and now essentially you haven't built the knee wall, and the ordinance changed in the meantime, so now you're looking to go the cheaper route with it. I'm a little disappointed in that, but it's not going to matter. That's the reason I'm voting no. I am also going to ask, what do you have to stop cars on those parking spaces?
There's parking blocks there now that we would just move back that distance to
And
accommodate
they're
that.
anchored in?
Yeah, they are now, yeah. We'll have to pull the anchors out and then re-anchor them in.
Okay.
Mr. Frederick?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, guys, I guess my concern, and I'm glad that you noticed that the ordinance had changed, and I don't know if you guys noticed that, or we contacted you, how did that come about?
We came to you, I guess, is
Yes,
correct?
when we first went
Sir,
through
move to this, your name,
Oh,
and
Marv-
then get right to the mic,
Marv
too.
Shaner.
Okay.
We had some discussion with Liz about putting the knee wall in, and then we were going with submittals, proposals to do the knee wall. The last time we were looking at this, then she had, we said, is there anything happened since then? And at that point, she informed us that the ordinance had changed. So if we wanted to consider, that's up to us, but.
And when was this meeting? When was this? I mean, my concern here is that the variance was requested of the zoning board on February 2nd, 2017, which means you had the summer of 2017, the summer of 2018 to get the knee wall built.
That's correct.
So I'm nervous about, okay, we give you another variance, are we going to see bushes there this year? I mean, that's what I worry about.
Yeah.
Because you missed 2 whole building periods to put the wall up.
The direct answer is yes. The reason the knee wall didn't go in is because the estimates were as high as $21,000. There wasn't $21,000 to put a knee wall in. So when we were starting to, we're getting to the point where we got to do something here or we close because we're not going to get an occupancy permit. That's when we went back to Liz and said, all right, here, I got to start giving you some proposals here to do something with that wall.
Well,
This serves two purposes. Number one, this was one of the original concerns, and I know we went through all the concerns with the appeal board before, with safety and the fact that there's the aesthetics of this. I mean, there's no greenery on this. This is concrete in a building. And so the first concern that we had 2 years ago was something that was starting to make the place look a little more comfortable than concrete. Not to mention, again, the fact that we're right across from an elementary school. We have kids climbing on that east wall now that separate us from the residential area, right? So we don't want kids climbing on it. It's going to be 14 inches wide if we put a masonry wall in. It's this high. Now we got skateboarding, we got kids hurdling it, believe me, there's kids all over that wall on the east side. So our concern was, I don't want to have safety issues with the wall. And at that time, we even talked about, okay, as opposed to the wall, something a little more aesthetically pleasing, maybe a wrought iron. And then we thought about that and said, well, if we got kids climbing on a wall, we don't need some child skewering himself on a wrought iron fence either. So we were back to this, quite frankly. So, you know, yeah, it's cheaper, yes. Money was a big concern, yes. But if you go back to the original arguments, that was why we wanted to put the hedge in. We had aesthetics and safety issues in our minds.
Okay, no, I'm going to vote for it tonight. I was just concerned about, you missed 2 complete summers and you're telling me you guys didn't have the money to do it, basically.
Well, that's right.
Okay.
I mean,
Do you think you're going to do it this
I'm not
spring?
going to sit and.
No, you're telling me the truth, I expect
I'm
that.
I'm not, yeah, I'm not going
Yeah.
to tell you anything other than the truth. Now, there are, and part of the reason there wasn't money for it is because we were updating the interior as well. The canopy got delayed, so there's money allocated for other things, not a $21,000 knee wall. Now, this parking lot, we're going to do the repair of the parking lot. We want to do this wall, or the hedgerow, at the same time we do the parking lot, because the guy's going to come and he's going to be cutting out slabs. So we're going to have a slot there with a berm, so yes, we're going to have to put, if nothing else, you got to put the hedgerow in a week after he cuts a hole in there. It's going to be a 50-foot hole. So,
Okay. All right, well, I appreciate your answering the question, and good luck.
Mr. Karen?
Thank you. Yeah, just like Councilman Rubino said, this is the situation we were thinking of when we changed the ordinance to give businesses other options, you know, to just a strict knee wall and the Harper overlay there. So just one concern going forward, you know, with the hedge, obviously it requires maintenance. You know, you don't have any lawns or anything on there now, so there'll be some additional regular maintenance thing you're going to need to add as part of the business. So I fully expect you guys to live up to
There will
that, so
be-
that's good. I see you've got the irrigation
yes.
built in there as well, you know, to keep the plants healthy. So, yes, I think that's going to look great, and it's a great example of what we're trying to do. So, thanks.
Mr. Vitale?
I'm just curious, you said your highest estimate was $21,000. What was your lowest estimate? We need to have some idea what we're asking people to put up.
Well, it was, the low end was something other than a footing in a masonry knee wall like we talked about at the appeal board. We were as low as about 11,000, which was a block wall sitting on top of the current pavement. And then it would just epoxy that first course or row of.
Would that, Liz, would that comply with our codes, not in terms of how it's built? We glue blocks to parking lots now?
So that was one of the many options that they were looking at, and it was landscape pavers that would be epoxied to the cement and then have rebar reinforcements going through. So it would have to still get a building permit and be approved by the building department prior to construction. And that was one of the concerns that I had. I wasn't entirely sure the building department would approve something like that.
Okay. Well, like was pointed out, it took you 2 years, and I don't completely buy the argument, because if you came to us for all these plans, you had to price this out. You knew it was part of your original site plan, so to say that, oh, afterwards, we discovered it was $21,000,
No, that wall
doesn't
was-
sound genuine.
That wall was not part of our original site plan.
You were in front of us for another variance to allow material besides brick.
That was
No,
for the
that-
building exterior.
Yes.
Yes. We didn't find this out till after that.
Right.
There was only one variance, and that was for the building, which is now
Right.
done.
Okay, well, I hope the kids don't skateboard on your shrubs.
Mr. Asha?
Was it 21,000 with the parking lot and the wall?
No, that was the wall. You've got a 50-foot footing with 5 yards of concrete just in the footing. I mean, we did the same thing. I almost, yeah.
That's why I was curious.
Mr. Karen?
Yeah, just to clarify, the site plan that we originally approved probably back in January 2017 did not have the wall. because you're going to go ahead with the variance. And our typical practice is that if we know you're going to be asking for a variance on something, we include that as part of the site plan approval, and then you get the variance from ZBA and go ahead and do that. In this case, you know, the wall wasn't part of the site plan, wasn't a part of the original plan, ZBA denied it, and then you had to go out and get quotes and realize the expense you're in, right? Okay, thank you.
Just one last thing.
Yes, Mr. Frederick.
Yeah, so for the landscaping, just so it's on the record, you guys do realize that it has to be between 30 inches and 36 inches. All right, it should be maintained at that. I mean, you're going to want it to look good anyway, because it's your site, so. But just so that we're clear, it's 36 max. All right.
Correct, yep, that's why we chose the type of plant that we chose that grows tall and skinny.
Yep.
All right, what'd you choose?
XIUs. It's
Oh,
the-
nice.
It's the right hedge.
Yep, well done. Thank you.
Who's doing it?
Moved by Mr. Rubino, supported by Ms. Rusi to approve the request to amend the planning case to allow landscape hedge in place of a 30-inch brick knee wall at Irma's Frozen Custard, 28840 Harper. All in favor?
Aye.
All
No.
opposed? 6-1. Thank you, it passes. Thank you. Have a good day. Item 4.1 is to request the adoption of a resolution for joint land use study in cooperation with the Selfridge Air National Guard. We have from the Macomb County Planning Department, Vicki Rad. And I know this is a late ad that I put on. We try not to do this, but I know that this seemed rather important, so thank you for coming, and kind of, we actually have the information and the resolution, but you're here to kind of give an overview, Vicki, of where we are, what's the purpose of this, and do that. So I'll let you do that, and then you can take some questions.
Very good.
Thank you.
So, once again, Vicki Redd. I am the Interim Director for Planning and Economic Development for Macomb County. And I'm here to just kind of give a broad overview of what this joint land use study is about. We just hosted a kickoff meeting on the 23rd of January to really look at some community stakeholder involvement with what's involved. So when we look at the reason why we're pursuing this, we were actually reached out through the DOD, the Department of Defense. There's an agency called the Office of Economic Adjustment. Selfridge was nominated for a joint land use study, and they were accepted, which is a good thing for us and for our community. What that means is that we're able to draw down some federal dollars for this study. They did seek a fiduciary as well as a grant administrator and reached out to Macomb County to be that partner. We stepped up and said absolutely. As part of the joint land use study, there is a 10% match, but we're not asking our communities to financially support that. That is something that the county will help support with our partners at the state of Michigan. And ultimately, if we look at what our overarching goal with the joint land use study is to look at compatible use with Selfridge and some of the neighboring communities. We have some communities that are actually adjacent or abut to Selfridge. What we don't want to see there potentially is a 6-story hotel right on the runway. And so that is a conversation to have with those communities. When we look at a community like Lake St. Clair, we included your community because you guys do share the asset of the waterway, Lake St. Clair. And so part of this study is looking at our community stakeholders. What we've asked for, and we've provided some sample resolutions and sample letter of support, and we're asking the communities to provide that. The entire process, we're looking at the study being anywhere between 12 to 18 months. However, community engagement, it will be very important. And part of this resolution is to say, will you be an active participant? Once we hire on a consultant, we'll be forming both an advisory committee. These are our individuals more on the technical side, as well as an executive committee that would possibly meet quarterly to get updates on how the joint land use study is proceeding. One of the overarching goals with this study, when we had pursued the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35, back in 2017, when they looked at basing that at Selfridge, one of the areas we were nicked on our report was the fact that we didn't have a study on file. So having the study on file will actually help us and benefit us in the future when they look at future basing for that. I hope I provided a brief overview, but I can take any questions as well.
Questions? Ms. Rusi?
Thank you. I guess first off, I think we all recognize and appreciate the value Selfridge brings to the area, but I do have some questions about this particular request.
Sure.
You say that we wouldn't be on the hook for any of the match or anything. What if you apply for the money and the money's not granted, but we've passed these resolutions saying we want to provide support for this? Will we be on the hook to fund anything for the study if the grant doesn't come in the way you're expecting it to.
No, and the way that the process works is we are actually gathering all of the letters of support and resolution, and that goes into the application process. That all gets submitted to DOD OEA, and then at that point, they will determine whether they're going to fund our study or not.
If they say no, then what's the plan?
We will just not conduct that. We will not hire the consultant to do the joint land use study.
Okay, so it's not going to go forward if the funding does not come in.
Correct. Or perhaps we look at other sources, but having DOD funds would be nice.
Are there any other financial commitments that you would be expecting from us as a city?
Not financial. I think the biggest commitment would be time, resource of time, looking at, who would be dedicated sitting on the advisory committee and then from the executive committee or leadership committee.
And I know we received a draft form resolution. Does the resolution need to be in this form? Is that part of the request, or can we tweak it a little bit if we feel?
Yes, you can absolutely modify that if there's language in there that you're not comfortable with. What we're seeking is just that good faith effort that you're looking to participate and that you are a community partner in the study.
Because, yeah, one of the statements in here I do have some discomfort with is the very last sentence, that the, insert name of city, so that the City of St. Clair Shores commits to a good faith effort to implement the JLUS recommendations. And I can't sign something promising that I'll commit to some recommendations that are not in existence yet.
Correct.
I think we've all hired consultants, at jobs in the city, at boards and whatnot, that the consultant makes these recommendations, you look at them and you disagree with them, they're not feasible, they're not the direction you want to go to, and you decide not to implement them. I don't feel comfortable signing something where I'm committing to a good faith effort to implement recommendations that I haven't received yet, that don't exist yet, that I don't know if would be a good idea for our community to implement.
Correct.
So I would want that sentence, I think, stricken from the draft. And I think I'd be more comfortable with the language then.
Okay, and just so you're aware, that template was actually supplied to us from OEA. And they did say, basically, the communities do have the right to, come forth with their own resolution or their own language in that letter of support. So you can absolutely strike that language. And I think ultimately, the outcome of the joint land use study will have recommendations. There may be some things in there that we may pursue and receive some more federal funding based on prioritization. However, like you mentioned, we don't know what those recommendations are until we hire the consultant.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Asha?
Yes, thank you. The joint land use, is this land only in Selfridge Air Base? Or is it surrounding area or
No, we
just in
didn't
the
really want to
base?
use the word joint land use. That's actually a DOD term for the study. We are calling it the Selfridge Sustainability Study. And so what that looks at is not just Selfridge proper, but the land use, compatible land use, both north, south, east, and west.
So it's, how far does it reach out? East, and west, and north, and south?
So we're including Chesterfield Township, Macomb Township, Mount Clemens, Harrison Township, Clinton Township, and some of the lower areas of St. Clair Shores, Fraser, and Roseville.
Okay, so the development, you're putting a team together to really look at the type of buildings or the usage around the surrounding area.
Correct. We do have currently right now some encroachment issues as far as some of the land surrounding Selfridge and the airfield. However, we're also looking at, the use of the waterways, things such as that. So, it's looking at it from a full perspective. Part of the draft scope of work that we will be submitting as part of our application, we'll be looking at what are some of the areas that we really want to make sure that we study as part of this. And that is kind of where, having that input from the communities to get that feedback. The county has some perspective. I think Selfridge has some perspective. But to also hear back from the community saying, maybe these are some things we should also include while we have this joint land use study open.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Vitale?
Yeah, I had shared similar concerns as Councilwoman Rusi brought up, that unfortunately, we didn't receive any notice on this until very late in the game. And just as she mentioned it, there's a line in here that says the RFP will contain a scope of work to define the tasks and intended outcomes of the study. In the next few weeks, we will be sending a draft of that scope of work for your review. Well, obviously, a few weeks from now is not today, but you
Right.
need the resolution done today. I wish we could have received this a little earlier than we did.
Right.
However, because actually, my issues with the same sentence as Councilwoman Marusi, the good faith effort, because there may be things in this that I don't agree that we should do. That having been said, I also support Selfridge Air Base. I live very near Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, so I'm familiar with some of the arguments that are made. Is flight path going to be a part of this? Sonic booms, things like that? Sound of freedom?
Yeah, one of the considerations when we look at the noise, right? So right now, we currently have A-10s that fly into Selfridge as well as KC-135s. We understand the noise impact in the communities that surround that. If, for example, we were to base the F-35, I think that noise decibel would change or alter a little bit, and so we would put that into consideration.
Okay. I personally don't hear much. The biggest annoyance I get is Channel 7 hovering a helicopter over the neighborhood, but it's much worse than anything I hear from Selfridge. But I guess maybe if the opportunity, something presents itself in the future, please give us a bigger heads up than this. But in the absence of that language, I can support the resolution.
Mr. Frederick.
Thanks, Mayor. A couple things. First off, it looks like there was 141 other land use studies done across the United States since 1985. So I'm surprised that we haven't done one.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's time that we do. The one thing that you mentioned was that this would actually help us retain that base here, whereas I was thinking that this might be something, a precursor to losing the base. The joint land use, we can sell part of it off or whatever. So I'm glad to hear that part of it. Big supporter of Selfridge and a lot of stuff out there. You mentioned the word encroachment.
Mm-hmm.
Give me an example. What kind of encroachment issues, if you can talk about it, do you have at Selfridge now?
Right, and I don't want to speak for Selfridge, but we know looking at the crash zone, there was a study that looked at the area that surrounds Selfridge, looking at it as north and south. There's parcels of land that haven't gone developed, and perhaps maybe they shouldn't be developed because they do sit in the crash zone.
Well, driving down North River Road, there's a brand-new subdivision going in called the Brigad something or other. And, that is that what you're talking about you don't want to have happen? Yet that they're still building houses in there.
Right, so
Beautiful
I wouldn't,
homes.
I
Big
wouldn't
houses.
speak for Selfridge or the current landowner of that particular property, but that would be an example that we would hope maybe we receive as a recommendation coming out of the joint land use study is what is the best use of that land.
Okay, and then the last thing I have is, will this study take into account the current PFAS situation that we have all over the state, all over the country, but
Unfortunately, it does not. And that would be a different agency that would help kind of cover that, including EPA. But we know that that is on our radar as a county, knowing that we've got this asset at Selfridge and that there has been some PFAS
well,
statistics that came through.
all right, so do we have a plan to find out what's going on with that over there? I mean, have you, aside from this, is there a plan to?
Yeah, we have a great working relationship with the commanding general, General Slocum, who definitely has provided us some insight into the testing that was done at Selfridge. Not necessarily there's a plan, but we know that this is a problem throughout many National Guard bases, not just in Michigan, but across the United States, and that there should be some type of cleanup effort in place for that.
Okay. And I guess the only other thing I would have is that if we're doing the resolution, I'd be in favor of striking that one line as well. And then I don't know if we're gonna be sending a letter, which you had a copy of a letter in this packet, and there's a couple things in there that along the same lines, committed to providing support.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of language. If we can take that out, I'd appreciate that as well. So.
Mr. Karen?
Thank you. A lot of my questions get answered. One thing, in terms of, is like St. Clair Shores are about 3-4 miles. Our northern border is about 3-4 miles south of the border of Selfridge there. So probably in terms of the land around it, not so much impacted by it. But one of the concerns of like the operations going on there, particularly maybe even Coast Guard operations, as a part of the joint land use study, how they're operating out of Selfridge and how they integrate with the lakes especially with all the marinas that we have in St. Clair Shores. Would that be a part of it in terms of the actual operations of Selfridge and what they do as a part of the
No,
study?
we
Or is it
can-
strictly kind of just
yeah.
what's going around, what happens around Selfridge versus what Selfridge does itself?
Right, and that could be definitely something that we could explore if we were to look at, maybe some challenges or maybe some opportunities with the shared asset. One of the unique things that actually came up with St. Clair Shores, Roseville, and Fraser actually had to do with wildlife. Looking at the bird habitat, making sure there aren't some exotic birds that are flying into the flight migration path. And so that came up, which was really interesting because we didn't realize, there could be that potential there. But, if we had a nature center that was bringing in birds, we would want to make sure that potentially that nature center is not anywhere near that flight path.
Okay. So it'd be giving us more of a heads up of what
Correct.
to look out for around there.
Right, and there was actually quite a few studies that were done in this particular space, so it's just a matter of us taking a look at that and figuring out like what would be the best possible solution so that our cities and our townships understand those things as well.
Okay. And in terms of the support needed for the advisory committee and executive committee, what type of personnel are you looking for in that case?
So when we've had multiple conversations with Jay Sweat, he's our program manager over at OEA, he defines that executive or leadership committee as your elected official. So it could be potentially your highest elected official or the mayor. On the other end, it could be for the advisory committee or the technical committee, it could be your city planners, it could be your roads, anyone who is involved with any type of environmental planning could be potentially involved with that one. So that one has a little bit more possibility as far as involvement.
Okay. All right. So with that, make a motion to approve the resolution without the last line being included.
Support.
And the letter changed as Councilman Frederick had stated.
Moved by Mr. Karen, supported by Mr. Rubino. Question by Mr. Rubino.
Well, we're doing one or the other, correct? The resolution or the letter, or both?
Both.
We're doing both? Okay. Councilman Frederick answered, I was going to ask about the PFAS also. I guess this is more for our city attorney. Is there anything binding us in this resolution or letter that we should be concerned about?
Not with the taking out the word, the support language and the last line.
Very good, thank you.
Moved by Mr. Karen, supported by Mr. Rubino to approve the resolution letter with the removal of that last line and that commitment wording there. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 7-0. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate it, Vicki. Item 5, bids, contracts, purchase orders, request from fire department to award blanket PO and purchase air packs and rapid intervention team packs. Chief Piper.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So before you have our agenda item to purchase our air packs and our rapid intervention team packs. These are the breathing apparatus that our firefighters carry in on their back every day, about 3 times at least today that we've used these to bring our own breathable air in those immediately dangerous to life and health environments. So we, to keep from having to purchase all of the packs at once, we have a replacement plan that does a few each year and keeps us on task and keeps the budget from taking a big hit at each time. In order to do that, however, we do have to get the same type of pack that we currently use. However, this is not a sole source vendor. We are able to reach out and say, whoever can sell this pack, we want your best price. So that's what we did. We put out an RFP back in December. It was out for approximately 3 weeks. We had quite a lot of vendors that it was sent to initially, had about 11 vendors that downloaded it. And then in our area, it looks like, well, we had the one bid that came back that from sort of the historical or information that I'm finding, sounds like Scott Airpack likes to do things on a more regional standpoint. And since a local vendor can support it better, that's evidently why only one vendor chose to submit. But to help assuage some of the council's concerns, based on quotes that we were getting back in October, this is right in line with what we had been receiving, and this was the best price at that time. And so this company was able to get the best price from Scott that they could pass on to us, and are putting in some extra bottles for free beyond what we were asking for, which is about another $5,000 discount in there. It's money that has been budgeted. We have the line item budget for it. And thanks to some good management of grants, we were able to, through some of the stuff we had through FEMA, we've got confirmation today. We've actually got about $5,800 back on, that goes with that Quint grant. So this equipment can be used on that. So we can actually use some of this money towards that, or just to offset some of what we paid for the Quint to begin with out of the city share. So that was some nice news that we just found out today. That's about the size of it for right now. I'll entertain any questions if I can help clarify for anybody.
Mr. Rubino?
In our paperwork, it states that it's equipment compatible with our existing air packs.
Yes. These are,
What are we buying? Give me a breakdown of the different pieces we're.
so the two main things we're buying, and they're two different styles, but the one is the air pack, the backpack with the bottle that you see the firefighters carry. That's what we're purchasing. It's the same brand and model as the ones we currently have right now. There is one addition just because of a newer NFPA standard that came in. Those, the actual straps have to come apart completely for cleaning because of the carcinogens. But other than that, it's the same exact air pack we use right now. The other pit in there, the RIT pack, the Rapid Intervention Team. So if a team of firefighters goes down on every fire, we have a whole nother group right here who's ready to go in very quickly. They bring a different style of air pack. It's very scaled down. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles. They just go in with that, can hook up to the downed firefighter's pack. If their pack came off somehow, this one can easily and quickly be put on that downed firefighter team. So those are the two main components. It's basically the backpacks that we wear, just the normal one, and then a very scaled down version of that we use for rescue. And then, of course, the cylinders that go with that.
So are the cylinders interchangeable at all?
In these style of air packs we have, yes, and in those RIT packs, they're all the same bottle.
Right, but with other manufacturers, I know like Scuba or Medical, when you look at air bottles, oxygen bottles, they're pretty much universal.
So if they have the right kind of fitting, the answer is technically, but based on what the manufacturers recommend, they do not necessarily want those to mix.
So the
these-
manufacturer makes the bottles also?
Correct.
Okay. How much, when was the last time we upgraded this equipment?
So
How long ago?
we had a safer grant back in around 2012 that enabled us to get basically our entire fleet of packs, 35 air packs.
All right, so 35, and right now we're doing, what, 5 and 6?
Correct. So what I'm asking in here, I'd like to purchase 5 to 6 right now, and then also issue a blanket PO because I have other monies in another line item for replacement and repair. Should other air packs go down, we can use this same PO because it's going to be the same vendor to purchase more.
What's the life expectancy of these air packs?
So it's a good question. We were talking with Scott, basically 10 to 15 years. Busier departments, we get closer down on the lower side of that, but probably 10 to 12 years. They actually have, with an asterisk, they have a 15-year warranty on these air packs, but that's basically through things like a breakdown through craftsmanship. If we, because we're quite hard on these air packs when we're going through, if we catch it on something or cut a hose or anything like that, that's on us. But if it's a failure because of the equipment, they do have that 15-year warranty.
All right, and do you have any idea of how many other companies make these, not these air packs, but make air packs for firefighters?
I do. I'm personally familiar with at least 4 different manufacturers of air packs. They tend to be the 4 main ones that are out there. These Scott air packs tend to be what we ended up with at some point in history at the St. Clair Shores Fire Department. And so that's what we're looking to continue on with at this time.
All right, I guess what I'm getting at is, and I have no idea. Is it possible to save money by buying them all at once every 15 years? And bidding it out to the various 4 or 5 vendors? Or is,
It is possible. There's a couple issues with that. One, these do tend to go down over time. Go down as in have a breakage or
so
something
you'll
happen.
need some replacement?
Correct. So we're just through the life of them, we end up replacing a few a year anyway. So that wouldn't be as good. The other side of that, we might get a volume
But we'd still
discount.
replace them for you. We wouldn't make you go in the
Correct,
fire
correct. No,
without.
and I appreciate that. The other side of that is, we could possibly get a volume discount, say we're buying 35 at a time, so save that, and every 12 to 15 years buy them. The one downside, and our guys are sharp and they can learn, but it's like, if you go in and you're driving, say, a stick shift car, and suddenly you switch to automatic. I do when I get in my wife's car, every time I stomp down my left foot because I'm expecting a clutch. There's little things that just throw you off just a little bit. How they work and how they operate, yes, they're gonna be mostly the same with a good bit of intensive training. Could we switch to a different brand of air pack? Absolutely. It's just a matter of loosening or lessening that transition time, and by keeping this same style of pack, because it's the ones that we literally use in the dark in a smoky room and you have to do it by feel. It's just safer not to change mainstream, and this is one of the 4 main ones. If you were to poll pretty much every fire department in the country, there's usually about 4, and sometimes it comes down to a flavor preference, but this is a good manufacturer that has a good product and maintains it well.
Thank you.
Mr. Asia.
Yeah, well, it's smart. They're all interchangeable, then you rotate them out. So,
Correct, yes.
You don't want to be messing with fittings and, then they don't hook up to the masks or whatever. So I'd make a motion to approve.
Support.
Thank you.
Moved by Mr. Asia, supported by Mr. Frederick. Mr. Frederick.
Yeah, Chief, these bottles, I know that when we were talking about some of the newer engines, that there is a space now in the seat where these bottles can live.
Yes, sir.
Or at least, so you're not sitting forward like this. So
Correct.
these fit in the new engine, correct?
Yeah, all of our trucks have this ability, and these fit in nicely, and it enables us, as while we're driving down the road, even keeping our seatbelt on, to work into that air pack. So as soon as you get on scene, unclick your seatbelt, lean forward, and you're already wearing your air pack.
So that air pack actually lives in the truck.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Excellent. That's a big difference for us too, in terms of timing and.
It helps quite a bit
and
on
comfort,
cut down.
You don't want to be uncomfortable getting to the fire. I understand being uncomfortable leaving, but you want to kind of
Right.
have all your wits about you.
No, it definitely speeds up the response and being able to get dressed in time, so it's very
All
helpful.
right, thank you.
Mr. Vitale.
I was going to quote back some of what you had written in the rationale in regards to why, but I think that Mr. Rubino's question kind of covered that anyway, so I won't belabor that point. I always ask this question, you'll get to know as you see me up here when we buy new equipment.
Sure.
As we take some of these units out of service, do they have any value to a volunteer department or something like that?
Somewhat, yes, sir, they do, and we tend to, so they'll use kind of on the front line trucks, towards the backup trucks, and then get rotated into training a little bit. By the time we get there, there is some value, not so much on the retail side, but definitely on
Yeah, I
being
mean
able
more or
to,
less
like,
the
donate to the
donation
UP.
side to a
Yes, sir.
volunteer department in a
Yep.
rural area or something like that. We could look into that.
Absolutely.
As we rotate them out.
Yes, sir.
Moved by Mr. Asia, supported by Mr. Frederick, to approve the bid to purchase the air packs and RIT packs for $54,720 to West Shore Fire. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, council. Appreciate you.
Have a good evening. Consent agenda,
I separate 6F and move to approve the rest.
support, moved by Mr. Kieran, supported by Mr. Frederick, to remove 6F. Everything else, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Kieran, on 6F, please.
Yeah, in terms of the appointments and reappointments for the boards and commissions, Beautification Commission, we had a person who asked not to be reappointed, actually wanted more time to do more traveling in retirement years. And we do have an alternate, Mary Ann Motika, that I'd like to request that she be elevated to full member of the Beautification Commission as a part of the rest of the appointments that were in the packet.
Is that a motion?
I'd make that motion.
Moved by Mr. Kieran, supported by Mr. Frederick to move Mary Ann Motika up from the alternate position to a full member of the Beautification Commission. Questions on that? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7, updates and follow-ups. Mr. Smith, we had a handful, just actually a couple from last meeting. If you would, you have it in front of you, and I do too. If you go through it, please.
With regards to, we had an issue on the change in language for the primary ordinance, and Ms. Rusi asked that be added to the website. It was added on January 22nd. Pardon me. We had an issue with residents concerning speed on Harmon. Our traffic trailers are currently not functioning, and during the blizzards with the ice, we weren't too concerned about people speeding, but traffic officers will be assigned to monitor the situation there. Councilman Vitale asked that we reach out to Clinton Township and the county with regards to New York Street. We have reached out to the county, and council got emails back. There was some discussion about a special assessment district possibility, but that is something that would have to be done through Clinton Township. We have attempted to communicate with Clinton Township, but I don't believe we've gotten any feedback from them, have we, Chris?
I spoke with one of their staff at a meeting on Friday. They had a street millage at one point a few years back, and 3 of their board members went out and campaigned against it, and it failed. And so it's really something they need to come to grips with, not something we need to solve for them.
Okay, and then finally, we had a house, pardon me, that was brought up on Cubernus, that was owned by a corporation. It is a registered rental. We have been out there and done some inspections. There was some electrical work that was done without inspection. I talked with the inspector. They believe that the work is safe, but permits are being pulled, and the inspections will be done to make sure that they're fully compliant.
Mr. Rubino.
On that house on Cubernus, for an
Yes.
example. So everyone knows it's being used to grow marijuana. Talk to the police, basically now, even with the smell, there's nothing you can do. It's illegal to do. So the police cannot intervene pretty much at all. I mean, it's without probable cause that they have too many plants or whatnot. It's their right to grow it. But I want to go back to an issue I brought up, I don't know, before the holidays, on why can't we develop an ordinance to make sure that these grow facilities, which are being used for business in a residential area, why can't we have ordinances making sure that they're safe? And they're not going to cause structure fires and things of that nature. That's one. So I want to go back to us getting to work and finding out if there's a way that we can make sure that these facilities are safe. I think Ms. Rusi last week, a week or a few weeks ago, sent me an article of a grow facility that caught on fire and burned down in another city. I think we're going to see this happening more and more. These are not, you're not plugging in a heat lamp. These are, this equipment is pretty heavy duty, and we're putting it in our neighborhoods. We should have the right to make sure that it's safe. I understand if someone wants to put their home at risk, but the neighbor's house is now at risk also. That, and I also want to look, because I actually talked to somebody who's involved with one of these facilities over the weekend, and he said there are filters. They heard my complaints. There are filters that some cities are requiring to eliminate the odor, some sort of charcoal filter. I don't know if that's cities that have opted in for grow facilities or not, but can we find out if we can force people to filter these grows so that the entire neighborhood or close neighbors are not adversely affected by that?
Bob?
This question has come up before. I actually was over at the Cubbernis House, and have been and are working with the police department on some of the issues that perhaps we can do. But it has long been our position that just because something can be done lawfully does not mean that it can be done in such a way that creates a nuisance. So we have looked at some other ordinances and perhaps creating our own to address some of the issues that you're talking about.
Okay. Do you know how far away we are from council seeing some of that stuff?
Well, I'm not even sure council will see at this point, but we are researching legally. I will check on that and give you a telephone call on that.
Well, wait a minute. If we're talking about ordinances, council should know
can't pass
something.
any.
Yeah, I'm not.
What's that?
I said, I can't pass any.
What I meant by that is that before anything comes before council to approve, we have to make sure that it is a lawful ordinance.
Gotcha.
So that's all I meant.
Okay. And how far away?
I will check on where we are with respect to the.
I'm not trying to rush you. I just,
You know, we could have something, I believe, if something can be had within a couple of months.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Vitale?
Yeah, to chime in on that, and then I want to actually go back to the street. Not so much a question, but I guess on this marijuana odor problem, more of a brainstorm here for Mr. Erie. I seem to recall language, I don't know if it's in our charter or I've read it in another charter, where we can actually regulate the smell from a bakery. And I've heard of bakeries being required to filter because of the bread smell. And it smells good, but I suppose if you live next to it, it wouldn't smell good. And every day. And in the case of the auto repair shop, I mean, that was based basically on noxious odor. We didn't do a study to see what was in that. We just knew it smelled bad. It smelled up the neighborhood. How is it that we can regulate what they burn in their furnace, but we're powerless here? Not really looking for an answer.
Okay.
It's a more rhetorical question that if there is something that can be done, I'm all in favor of it and requiring the filters, et cetera. And then to move back to the
New York Street.
Is there become a point, and I don't know who has jurisdiction over this, but a public street is open and it becomes so unsafe to drive upon that if our fire department were to need to drive down New York Street, we blow a tire on our way to a house that we're in St. Clair Shores, is there some sort of state minimum standard? Because if Clinton Township just decides they want to just let this fall apart until it turns back into gravel, are they allowed to do that, I suppose? That would be for Mr. Erie.
For Mr. Erie?
Are you questioning whether or not there's liability?
No, he's what question if someone.
Well, that's one angle, but is there any state, we have requirements that a road must be X number of feet wide to be considered a residential road. Do we have a similar to standard or quality of the road?
In terms of a city ordinance?
Our city ordinances wouldn't apply.
Like a state
But
regulation.
the state regulate.
Or it's a public hazard.
I don't know if there is, under standards of governmental immunity, of course, roads are an exception to that, but that's on the liability issue. Proper maintenance of roads is an exception to the normal governmental immunity protections. But in terms of a state regulation with respect to whether or not our first responder equipment can properly get down it, not that I'm aware of, but I will do some research.
If you could look into that, and I guess also, what I'm getting is, if a resident blew a tire on a pothole on this road, could they then make a claim against the city of Clinton Township?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's out there. Okay, that's all I had.
All right, we'll go then to comments by individual council members. Mr. Vitale.
Wow, I feel like I never left. I only had this, and I'm going to ask that it be put up on the projector. I had a discussion with Mr. Reyes about our process for a resident to install a sump system, and he did give me very good answers and put up very reasonable arguments to counter what I was saying. Right now, and jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but my understanding is I've got a diagram there that shows a typical sump system. And then coming off of that sump system in blue, I've got a line that goes out to the street and hits the stormwater drain, which is what we require right now per local city ordinance. And that's also fed from the top by the street curb drain. Would that be correct?
Yes.
More or less, you know, cheesy paint shop diagram aside. What the resident was asking is that they would be able to install what I've drawn in red, which would be a line that would come straight up on their own property, a pop-up valve, so the pumps has to have sufficient force to overcome that pop-up valve, and then the water would go out onto the lawn, let's say it's the front lawn, and obviously some of that's going to go back in. I would think you'd want to do that pop-up at least 4 feet from the foundation, the way you keep gutters away from a foundation. But then ultimately it does end up in the same place in the stormwater sewer, although perhaps less of it. I mean, even if it were 90% of it that still ended up in the storm sewer, that's still 10% less in our sewer. And this makes things a lot more cost effective for residents who wanted to take the initiative to install a sump system. And, you know, when I had originally talked to this with Mr. Reyes, I'd mentioned something about a French drain, and he made the point that the French drain is more than likely going to get overwhelmed by the rainwater before the pump ever hits it, and I thought about it, and he's probably correct with that. But I'm wondering if we could turn this over to our engineering firm and get their input on this. Since this is local ordinance, maybe there is a better way to do this to keep more water out of the storm sewers and to make this cost effective for residents. Maybe there's something that HRC can look at from another community that maybe does allow this. I'm not sure if anyone does. I know that when people run these things without permits, it's unfortunately how it's often done. I'm not advocating that, but if there were a way to do that within our ordinance by changing the ordinance, then I think it's something we should look into. So maybe it's something for HRC.
Okay.
Actually, that was all I had tonight. I hear the rain out there. I hope everybody's basement stays dry. And I'll tell you what, I have a sump, and sometimes I'll have a little bit of water after a ferocious rainstorm. Sometimes I'll be dry as a bone, and sometimes I'll have water after a minor rainstorm. So I don't know if a sump solves everything anyways, but I'm all for trying. So that's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Isha.
Oh, thank you. We had a rough couple of weeks with the snow, the weather, and I just really want to thank DPW for out there getting the streets cleaned, the side streets cleaned. I know a lot of people were complaining, but they got out there, they did it quick, and within a couple of days, you know, it was done. And then the mailman with the cold, you know, sure, we only missed a couple of days of mail, but how can you expect somebody to be out there when it's below zero that hard? But you know, they were able to catch up quickly. So I got all my bills, so I'm good.
Just to piggyback, I mean, the people that are out there, who were out there with the water department, I mean, and I know Mr. Smith and I talked about this. I mean, if we could get away with it, we were trying to avoid it, but quite frankly, there are some you just couldn't, and they are literally in those holes at these kind of temperatures. The water department people, it is a tough job, and we had a number of water main breaks. So again, kudos to them. We talk a lot about, right, police and fire, but the basic service of water and having your toilets flush and showering is just crucial. And the men and women of the water department are out there, and they endure tough conditions. And I know I speak on behalf of the entire community. We appreciate their work. It's all the time. And I will tell you, I have a water department individual who's kitty corner to me, and one of those days it was we were sitting there. It was 11 o'clock. We were all in the living room, and Jeff took off down the street, and he was going to a water main break, and it was 11:15, and he'd probably be out there 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, all night.
And so we appreciate that, so. Ms. Rusi.
Thank you. Just one quick announcement. St. Isaac Joe's Men's Club Chili Bowl is coming up. It's always a really fun event. It's a chili cook-off competition and also a beer tasting this year. They have craft beers on tap for purchase. And for the chili, they'll have prizes awarded for Judge's Choice, People's Choice, and Best Booth Design. The participants are encouraged to decorate their tables and theme, and people can wear costumes and get a little creative that way too. It's $5 admission and $3 for seniors and students. Sunday, February 17th, 2 to 6 p.m. in St. Isaac Joe's Parish Hall. Again, this is the St. Isaac Joe's Men's Club Chili Bowl, Sunday, February 17th, 2 to 6 p.m. in the Parish Hall. I hope to see you there. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Rubino.
Thank you, Mayor. Kudos to DPW too. I can't imagine working outside, let alone in water, in those conditions. But I wanted to touch on snow removal. This last snowfall, I was very impressed how quick we had the trucks out and working. But I'm wondering what we can do, or if there's anything else, equipment we can give them to get a little closer to the cement. And the reason I ask is the days following on a number of streets, and I'm going to say most streets, we had what seemed like 2 to 3 inches of what turned into ice because of the weather conditions that, again, made our streets, I think, unsafe just for general travel, but also, if we had emergency response and things like that, that were necessary. How can we change that? Because I drove around some other cities, and unfortunately, I don't know if it's because they're salting or what they're doing, but seemed like there was some cement on the road to where ours were. What do they put on our, the plows have what, spacers on them or?
Skids.
Skids?
Yep. Not all of them.
Not all of them?
No. For instance, the underbellies don't have skids. They have wear plates. But because, and I'm becoming more educated on this because I know it's the same thing. And so Mr. Babcock and his staff and I are working on what can we do to get closer down. I will tell you that the last storm, and we try not to keep council painfully aware of everything that's going on because I know you have regular lives too. But the last storm, part of the issue is we do salt main streets, and then some of that salt does get dragged down the side streets when the people turn off the main streets. Because of the back-to-back nature of the storms and the fact that we were having issues getting our supplier to provide us with salt, we got down to a level that we're a little uncomfortable with. When we get down below 50 tons of salt, we begin to worry if another storm comes, we're not going to be able to address the mains. And so we dialed back a little bit on what we were doing, even on the mains, and so therefore your drag down the streets was being affected.
All right, well, that was going to be my next.
Well, I skipped ahead, I'm sorry. So yes, we are looking at the equipment. I went down there and I kind of went over. We're still experimenting with the wing blades as far as what the equipment can and can't do. And so we're going to try mixing it up a little bit as far as what we're doing with that, how much load we're carrying in the truck when we are plowing. Again, because we were low on salt, we weren't carrying as much weight in some cases as we normally would. So not the best example of what we think we can do, but we are looking into what we can do to improve it.
How much salt do we use? And we get one typical snowstorm. How much do we use?
Actually, Brian's putting that information together. Typical is always a little, if it snows for 6 hours, but it only snows 2 inches, that's actually harder on us salt-wise than if it snows like crazy all at once and falls. We'll get you the actual numbers, but somewhere between 100 and 130 tons of salt is what one snowstorm will take out.
So, and we were down to 50, and that was, the concern was we get hit again, we don't have enough.
We're in trouble.
Yeah, and just to remember we had been ordering, and they hadn't been delivering.
Yeah, I mean, the salt had been ordered, but it's supposed to be here in 3 days. It was 6 days, 7 days, and we still didn't get any. And when they do bring it, if we order 200 tons of salt, it comes in 50-load, 50-ton batches. So, and again, everybody else is screaming for salt at the same time we're screaming for salt. So.
All right, so The other question I have is, how often do we get down? How often in the past years have we gotten to a level that was that low? I remember, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago where we were testing sand in some areas because we were
13,
low.
14, we were flat out.
Yeah.
I mean, we were mixing sand with salt and just open.
Okay,
32, we had used 3,200 tons of salt that year.
right.
And we average about 2,000 ton.
And our order, the only thing they guarantee is 2,000.
Right.
So,
But I guess what I'm getting at is we need some good numbers.
we're putting those together for you.
We are.
So that way, we might need to look back at some sort of facility. And I'm not sure I want to spend the money that last facility brought forward, but, you know, we should be able to make sure we have enough. And I don't know what the answer is, but I would like enough information where we can try to figure it out.
After that last snowstorm, it became, I mean, it was already a priority.
Because these didn't seem that bad, to be honest.
They didn't seem that bad? Well, I would disagree with you, because I think we got
5 inches?
Well, first off, we got a double, because we got hit with 2 or 3 on Sunday, so we were putting snow out before we got the next 5 inches. And then that snow, not only was it 5 inches, but it was also very windy, and it was a long duration, and we were salting significantly. I mean, throughout the day.
Well, I guess I don't want to
Okay,
get.
but I guess what I'm saying is, we were 8 days apart with 2 5-inch storms. I would have thought that we would have had enough salt. And you explained why we didn't. I mean, if it takes them 6 days.
And the other things, I don't want anybody at home to think we're not looking at different alternatives. One of the things I'm also asking Brian to put together is, as everybody up here knows, we do pre-treat our main roads prior to major storms coming through, because if you pre-treat it, then the ice doesn't adhere to the street, it's easier to get it off. Can we do that on side streets? So that if we know a major storm is coming, right now, we can't. Well, what would it take to do it? As you know, we got a new piece of equipment that has we can change trailers, put a tank on there. So we're looking at a lot of things. We realize it's a priority for council and our residents, and we're doing what we can to come up with some different alternatives and to improve our services as much as we can.
Understood. And, you know, a lot of it was the factor of the type of weather we had that created this situation. Sure.
And when you make that brine solution, everybody here knows what brine's made with. It's more of that salt. So we can only do what we can with what we've got.
Whatever happened to beet juice?
Yeah, that was, don't start. Hopefully Mr. Rubino's done on that. Now let's get to Mr. Karen.
Thank you, I just had to throw it out there.
Beet juice, we're gonna go there.
Mr. Karen.
Have to follow beet juice, huh? Amazing.
Just don't say it 3 times.
All right, first off, reminder, tomorrow night is the Pizza Palooza fundraiser for the Relay for Life for all the teams. So that's tomorrow night, Tuesday, February 5th, at Jefferson Middle School off of Rockwood at 11 Mile and Little Mac. Doors open at 6 p.m. Pizza tasting from several different vendors from 6:30 to 7. Cost is $8 per person. Children 12 and under are $5. So coming out, great fundraising event to kick off the relay season for Relay for Life that benefits the American Cancer Society. Next, wanted to give congratulations out to the St. Clair Shores Hockey Association that managed to pull off a silver stick trifecta between their 12U girls team, Saints, won the Pee Wee International Silver Stick. That was finals that were held over in Sarnia, Ontario. The 2008 Saints, their Squirt Atom team, won the Silver Stick Finals out of Forest, Ontario. And the girls 14U team won the Bantam tournament over in Aurora, Ontario. So that has 3 new banners coming in for the rafters. So let Mr. Bowman know he's got to make some room
Need a bigger
for the new
roof.
banners coming in from St. Clair Shores Hockey Association. So they've got a great run, great program they got going and showing great success. And last, got a text message here that just came in for the Lakeshore is doing a district-wide open house this Wednesday, February 6th. And if you have anyone that's, any children, they're looking for what schools to go into or looking for a change, you can check out Lakeshore this Wednesday. And for more information about the open house, call 586, as my eyes are not as good, 586-285-8481, or check out lakeshoreschools.org.
That is correct.
That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick.
And last but not least, I thought Mr. Rubino was going to save some time for me, but he didn't, so. Anyway, okay, first off, this coming Sunday, Feb 10, there is the International Order of Alhambra Glacier Caravan number 77. It's their annual memorial mass. And obviously, Father Ron will be there taking care of that. I mention it because some of our good friends are going to be honored. Mrs. Marchiori passed, and Tony Maroney, and as well as Darrell Brown and Gerald Teleski, and some other family members as well. So I see we have our Grand Knight from Kiwanis in that, not Kiwanis, but Knights of Columbus from St. Margaret's, Paul Desjardins out there. So we'll hopefully see you there on Sunday. That's Sunday, February 10th, and it's 12 o'clock Mass. Also wanted to say thanks to DPW. You know, Mayor, it does kill me when I see those guys in the hole. You want to stop and just say, hey, come on out, have a cup of coffee, here's something, but, they don't even want to be bothered, they want to get it done. Get out
Exactly.
I mean, and they've said that to me, no, we got to get this done. So, because there's somebody without water on that street probably, so. Also, I had some concerns about the snow as well. I know that there were a few spots where, it was very easy to slide through a stop sign. And we're lucky we didn't, hopefully everybody slowed down. It wasn't the first snowstorm of the season, so hopefully everybody had remembered from the last one, how to drive, how we forget that over the summer. But, Mike, I am actually attending the NTEA, which is the National Truck Association's national display in March. And every upfitter and every truck manufacturer in the world seems to be there. So I will grab us some brochures and see if there's any other ways that people are clearing snow other than beet juice. So, all right, I'll bring that back.
Thank you.
I also wanted to mention that that there is this is an annual event that happens every year through Father Solanus Casey Council of the Knights of Columbus. This event is a dedication to service, for which we're going to provide our police, fire, and first responders in our city. It's an honor at a mass and meal gathering. This is going to be March 10th. Mark your calendars. I know Jamie, our fire chief, mentioned he may be stopping in, hopefully with some other folks. I know you guys were there last year. This mass begins at noon, followed by a meal, a brief program, and then the Knights are going to be presenting a check. And we're not sure where that's going yet, although we did say retirement funds, but I'm not sure how that works yet. But they'll be presenting that check. Jamie, it's not your retirement fund exactly, I don't think. No. Okay, all right. So we'll, if you want to go to that, you want to RSVP no later than March 3rd, although it's going to be a regular mass, so you can come in and stop by and say hello. Before I get to the library announcements, I don't know if everybody got this. I got it individually, but it was a recognition of a business. Anybody else get this? It's the Citgo gas station on Little Mac and Martin. And the story is that an elderly resident came in and asked for $3 for her gas tank because her husband had just passed and she couldn't afford much more than that. Seth, the owner, started a GoFundMe account for her and raised $23,000 to help her out. The story was on national news, made CNN, and was started by one of our family-owned companies. He did not have to do that, but with his big heart, he could not let it go. And he's always looking out for one another. And she puts in her love, not hate, and totally agree. He was sincerely heartbroken on the axe incident, like all of us were, and did everything he could to help to raise money for the axe fund. So I guess what I'd like to do is, if it's possible for us to issue a proclamation of some sort for the Citgo gas station and get them in here and say thanks properly to one of our great business owners in the city.
I'd support that.
Yep. Okay. And I guess I don't know, Pete, have you heard, what's happening with the Coast Guard? I know they're back to work and they're getting paid, but who knows? But I know there was a huge shout out and a call out from Gilbert's to a bunch of other folks. And I saw something in the Sentinel this week that there was some others doing some things too, including the South Lake Bistro. And I was just wondering if you'd heard any other restaurants.
No, I think it's quieted down since thank God I've went back to getting paid.
All right, well, let's hope that they stay back to work. All right, with that, let's talk a little bit about the library, Candace, all right? And then maybe we'll get on here, all right? So the library is once again partnering with Imagine Theaters. This is very cool. When you show your St. Clair Shores Public Library card at any Imagine Theater in Southeast Michigan, you and your guests will receive a movie ticket, small popcorn for just $8. This is valid, here's the dates. It's only on the first Monday of each month, which was today. So you still have time, maybe, if you rush.
We're always.
So we can never do this.
We'll never get to
We
use
can never
it.
do this.
No, we can't, unless you go during the day, take a day off, and whatever. Okay, so it's the following, Feb. 4, March 4, April 1st, May 6th, June 3rd, July 1st, August 5th, September 2nd, and so on. It's available at any showtime and cannot be combined with any other offers. This Saturday, Feb. 9, from 1 to 4 at the Selinsky Green Farmhouse Museum, we're going to host a craft event for kids. Children can make a traditional Victorian Valentine Day card. All materials will be supplied and registration is not necessary. Come on over to the Selinsky Green Farmhouse Museum. On Tuesday, Feb. 12, the Friends of the St. Clair Shores Public Library will have their winter bargain book sale at the library from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Hardcover and softcover books will only be $1.
When?
10 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, Feb. 12.
Thank you.
All right. The mayor's already in line, I can tell. All right, so the Friends of the Library will have their monthly book discussion on Wednesday, Feb. 13th at 1 p.m. It's going to be in the Gilsdorf Meeting Room. The book will be, that they're discussing will be An American Marriage by Tyree Jones. Everyone is welcome. Pause for Reading, which is a big favorite, where we get to read to some of our favorite pets, continues on Saturday afternoons from 11 a.m. to 12 and from 2 to 3. There's also going to be a special drop-in craft for Valentine's Day to be held on February 6th. Children of all ages can visit the library anytime between 5 and 8 to create an easy do-it-yourself craft. Materials and instructions will be provided. Small children must be accompanied by an adult to help with scissors and glue. Children ages 1 to 3 are invited to get their groove on during our toddler dance party. This 30-minute program will include a short story followed by a lot of dancing. Join us at 10 a.m. on Saturday, Feb. 16th. Water will be provided and no registration is required. And I think that's all I have. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. City Manager's Report, Mr. Smith.
Mayor, I just wanted to, real quick, you hit on it earlier. The water main breaks, when they do come in, I've gotten calls from people, there's water running, I don't see anybody working on it, and the mayor's right. When it's really cold, we do send someone out, they take a look, as long as it's not undermining the road, as long as there's no danger of that, when it's that cold, we don't do any repairs, but we are aware of it. So call in once, please report it, but don't panic if you don't see someone right out there digging right away. They do monitor it first.
Or we may have 5 going.
Yes,
I mean, that's not
but it doesn't mean we forgot about it. We
correct.
just-
I mean, just
But call it in, definitely call it in.
We got to triage
That's
it.
right.
Yes,
Just
call
to-
in, but if
cruise
you
all
called
over.
in once and reported it, there's no need to call in again and report it. We know it's there, we're on.
And Mike, after one of our guys checks out, they leave one of the orange stands out over it.
Yep.
Designating where it's there.
Yep.
That's it.
Thank you. Audience participation. It's a 5-minute time limit. The views and opinions expressed under audience participation are those of the individual citizen only and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the mayor, city council, administration, of City of St. Clair Shores. Anyone who would like to speak? Yep. Sign in there, and then we'll just need your name and the city you reside in, please. Thank you.
My name is Richard Danoff. I live at 22506 Milner.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. At 22450, there's a vacant house. Supposedly someone's living in there, but there's 2 boats parked in the driveway.
What's the address?
22450 Milner.
Okay.
Now, I've heard from my neighbors that the guy supposedly bought it and has quit paying on it. I've checked, and they said he had a permit to have it there, but if he's not paying on the house and it's in foreclosure, I don't think he should leave him. It looks like he's storing boats on the property, is what it looks like.
Okay.
And the other thing is can you tell me how long Carl Giordano is going to have that marine shipping container on his property on Jefferson?
No, I can't answer any of those kinds of questions. At this point.
I understand he has a permit, but how much longer is he going to have it there? It's been there about a month. He's got an oversized garage already, and now he's got a shipping container. How much long? It looks ugly to have a big marine shipping container on Jefferson.
Okay.
And I just want to know, I was told he got a permit. How much longer can he leave it there?
Yeah. Well, sorry, I don't know. You're asking me that question on
Who do I
February 4th.
find out from that?
I guess we could.
Mr. Erie?
Oh, he's
I'm
not
not
going
aware
to, Mr. Erie, we're not going to have that answer for you today, so.
Who do I see and when?
Sure, you can call the city manager.
Leave your number with Mary, and we'll give you a call.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day.
Enjoy. See you all. Great.
All right. Anyone else? With that, we'll go back to the mayor's comments. I don't have any, so a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Karen, supported by Ms. Rusi. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed. Good night.